I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the server room that Monday morning. It wasn't a dramatic failure, no alarms, no flashing red lights, just silence. For most people, silence is peaceful. For me, it was terrifying. That room had a constant, low hum of cooling fans and processing units working in perfect harmony. I had spent nearly a decade listening to it. It was the sound of everything working exactly the way it should. The sound of stability, of control. But that morning, it was gone. That silence probably has you curious about what's coming next. Before we continue, if you feel these stories are worth your time, consider subscribing. It really supports our creative team. And I'd love to know where you're listening from, along with the temperature there right now. This is a fictional story, with some AI-enhanced elements to make it more engaging. Now, let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Lena Ross. I'm 46 years old, and until recently, I was the Senior Database Administrator at Ironclad Infrastructure Group for the past 8 years. I've been responsible for maintaining the payroll backbone that ensures over 12,000 construction workers across 4 states get paid accurately and on time. And let me tell you something, when construction workers don't get paid, it's not like missing a subscription payment or a delayed office salary. These are people who work 10 to 14 hours under brutal sun, in freezing wind, on unstable steel beams and unfinished highways. They don't wait quietly. They stop working. They walk off the job. And when that happens, entire projects collapse. The system I maintained wasn't pretty. It wasn't something you'd showcase in a corporate presentation. It was built over years, layer by layer, patched, adjusted, reinforced like an old bridge that still carries more weight than any modern replacement ever could. I knew every inch of it, every vulnerability, every workaround. So when that hum disappeared, I didn't just hear silence. I heard a warning. What most people never understand about payroll is that it's not just numbers on a screen. It's not a simple equation where you multiply hours by a rate and call it a day. What I managed at Ironclad Infrastructure Group was closer to a living organism than a system. It adapted, evolved, and sometimes barely held together under pressure. Our workforce was spread across multiple states, each with its own labor laws, tax structures, and compliance requirements. A worker could start the week in Oklahoma, continue in Kansas, and finish in Colorado. That meant 3 different tax systems, 3 sets of regulations, and often conflicting rules about overtime and reporting. And that was just the beginning. Then there were union contracts. Different crews operated under different agreements, each with its own overtime thresholds, hazard pay conditions, and meal penalty clauses. Some workers earned time and a half after 8 hours. Others only after 10. Some qualified for double pay under specific conditions that weren't written clearly anywhere except in obscure contract notes I had memorized over the years. Hazard pay added another layer. If a crew worked near chemical storage or high-risk zones, their rates changed dynamically. Equipment usage had to be tracked alongside labor hours, cross-referenced with GPS logs to ensure accuracy, and if any of that was calculated incorrectly, it wasn't just a minor error. It could trigger audits, penalties, or worse, lawsuits. The system handling all of this wasn't some sleek modern platform. It was a network of legacy databases, custom scripts, and manual verification processes I had built piece by piece over 8 years. I knew where it could fail before it failed. I knew which data couldn't be trusted and which reports needed a second look. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Things started to change 3 months before that silent morning. Ironclad Infrastructure Group had been acquired by a larger conglomerate called Vanguard Axis Holdings, a family-run empire that owned everything from cement plants to logistics networks. On paper, it looked like an upgrade. More resources, more connections, more opportunities. That's what they told us in the company-wide announcement. In reality, it meant something else entirely. His name was Daniel Carter, early 30s, sharp suit, polished smile, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to deal with consequences firsthand. He was the chairman's son, recently placed in charge of operations with a clear mission: streamline the company, eliminate inefficiencies, and modernize outdated systems. Those were the words he used. What they really meant was cutting costs, removing people, and replacing experience with cheaper alternatives. Daniel didn't understand the business the way he thought he did. He visited job sites in a spotless SUV, stepping out just long enough for photos before retreating to air-conditioned comfort. He spoke in buzzwords like digital transformation and lean optimization, as if saying them often enough would make them real solutions. To him, everything was a problem that could be solved with the right presentation slide. We crossed paths a few times before the meeting. Each time, he gave me a polite nod, the kind you give someone you've already decided isn't part of the future. I could feel it, even before anything was said out loud. The real turning point came on a Tuesday morning when I was called into his office. Human Resources was there too. Not a good sign. The moment I walked in and saw both of them waiting, I knew this wasn't going to be a discussion. It was going to be a decision. Daniel didn't waste time with small talk. He gestured for me to sit, eyes still fixed on the tablet in his hands, as if whatever was on that screen mattered more than the person in front of him. The HR manager, Claire Dawson, gave me a tight, rehearsed smile. I had seen that expression before. It never meant anything good. "Lena," Daniel finally said, leaning back in his chair, "we're moving toward a more efficient operational model." I kept my voice steady. "What does that mean for payroll?" A smile spread across his face, the kind that looked practiced rather than genuine. "It means innovation." He tapped his tablet, and the office door opened. A young woman walked in with confident steps, carrying a slim laptop like it was a trophy. "This is my niece, Ava Carter," he said. She just completed her MBA, top of her class. Ava extended her hand, perfectly manicured, her expression calm and self-assured. "I've been reviewing your system," she said. "It's very thorough, but also very manual." The way she said that word made it sound like something outdated, almost embarrassing. "Manual, how?" I asked. She placed her laptop on the desk and turned it toward me. Rows of color-coded cells filled the screen, formulas layered neatly, everything polished and visually appealing. "I've developed a fully integrated payroll solution in Excel," she said. "It's cloud-accessible, user-friendly, and designed to handle all calculations dynamically." I stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary, waiting for someone to laugh. No one did. "You want to replace the entire system with a spreadsheet?" I asked. "It's not just a spreadsheet," Ava replied, a slight edge in her tone. "It uses advanced formulas, automated macros, and structured logic. It's essentially a simplified database." Simplified. That was the word that echoed in my head. "Now I have to ask you something. If you think Daniel Carter was right to replace a proven system with a simplified Excel solution, drop a comment saying agree. But if you believe that decision was a complete mistake, don't hold back, just write fool. I'm genuinely curious what side you're on. Because sometimes, the biggest disasters begin with decisions that seem perfectly reasonable at first glance." I took a slow breath and tried one last time to make them understand. "You're underestimating what this system actually does," I said, keeping my tone calm. "This isn't just payroll, it's compliance, multi-state taxation, union regulation, hazard adjustments, and real-time corrections based on flawed incoming data." Ava nodded like she was following, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't hearing me. She was waiting for me to finish so she could respond. "I've accounted for those variables," she said. "The model uses lookup tables for state rules and automated calculations for overtime and tax deductions." "Lookup tables," I repeated, unable to hide the disbelief. "You think that covers federal prevailing wage laws or union contracts that change conditions based on consecutive workdays?" Daniel shifted slightly in his chair, already losing patience. "Lena, we're not here to debate technical details. We're here to move forward." "Then you need to understand what forward actually means," I replied. "If you get this wrong, people don't just get annoyed. They don't get paid. And when that happens, they stop working. Ava crossed her arms. You're assuming failure before even testing the system. I'm recognizing patterns, I said. You tested this on sample data, didn't you? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Daniel leaned forward. We've made our decision. The transition happens this week. There it was. Clear. Final. I looked at Claire, hoping for some sign of hesitation. She avoided my eyes. When is my last day? I asked. Friday, Daniel said. After the payroll run. We want a smooth handover. Of course they did. They wanted the system to work one last time before replacing it, and you'll need to document everything, Claire added gently. I almost laughed. Most of what keeps this system running isn't written anywhere. I said, it's experience. It's knowing where things break before they break. Ava gave a polite smile. That's exactly what we're simplifying. Simplifying. I stood up slowly, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, just certainty. All right, I said. Then let's see how simple it really is. The next 2 days felt like watching something fragile being handed to someone who didn't realize how easily it could break. I did exactly what they asked. I documented processes, outlined workflows, and wrote step-by-step guides for everything I could think of. File structures, data imports, validation checks, error handling, on paper. It all looked clean and logical. But reality doesn't live on paper. Ava followed me closely, her laptop always open, fingers moving quickly as she took notes. She asked questions, but not the kind that come from experience. They came from theory. Why do you manually verify state wage classifications, she asked at one point. Because the database we pull from has known inconsistencies. I replied. About 3% of entries return incorrect regional codes. If you don't catch it, workers get paid under the wrong rates. She frowned slightly. Can't we just correct the database? It's not ours to fix. I said. We work around it. She typed something down. Likely reducing a recurring issue into a one-line solution. Later that afternoon, I showed her how we cross-checked overtime calculations for crews moving across state lines. That seems redundant. She said, the model should handle that automatically. It doesn't. I answered, not when 3 jurisdictions overlap in a single work week. She nodded again, but I could tell she didn't believe it mattered. By Thursday, she was confident enough to start importing real data into her Excel system. I stood behind her as thousands of records loaded in. At first, everything looked fine. Then the lag started, cells froze, formulas recalculated endlessly. Error values began to appear in places they shouldn't. It's just processing, she said quickly. Clicking through tabs. I didn't respond. I'd seen this before. You might want to test smaller batches first. I suggested, it'll stabilize. She insisted, though her voice had lost some of its certainty. The screen flickered again. That was the moment I knew she wasn't ready, not even close. Friday arrived faster than it should have. By then, the decision was already in motion. Ava took over my workstation early that morning, her laptop connected, her spreadsheet open like it was about to prove something to everyone in the building. I packed my things quietly, keeping an eye on the clock more than anything else. Ready? She asked, forcing a confident smile. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded once and stepped aside. The payroll process started at 9 a.m. At first, nothing looked unusual. The system began pulling in data from multiple job sites, syncing time logs, aligning employee records. Ava clicked through her tabs, monitoring progress, occasionally refreshing the screen. Then the first sign appeared. A cluster of cells turned red. She frowned, clicked again, adjusted a formula. Then more cells changed. Within minutes, the sheet was filling with error messages. It's just a formatting issue, she said quickly. Though no one had asked, by 10:30, my phone started buzzing. A message from one of the payroll clerks. Something's off. One guy's showing negative hours. Another message followed. A crane operator is listed as earning over $900 an hour. Then another. Employee IDs are mixed with tax numbers. I didn't need to see the system to understand what was happening. Data columns had been misaligned during import. Hours were being read as rates. Identification numbers were being processed as multipliers. The formulas weren't wrong. They were working exactly as written. They were just applied to the wrong data. By 11 o'clock, it was chaos. Reports were generating nonsense. Pay stubs made no sense. Entire crews were misclassified. Some workers appeared to owe the company money. Others were being paid absurd amounts. Ava's confidence was gone. She kept recalculating, refreshing, trying to force the system to correct itself. Each attempt made it worse. And the worst part, the real damage hadn't even happened yet. Noon was coming, and that's when everything would hit the bank. By the time noon arrived, the situation had already slipped out of anyone's control. The payroll file was submitted to the bank at 11:58 a.m., 2 minutes later. It was rejected, not flagged, not delayed, completely rejected. The automated response cited inconsistencies in transaction values, invalid account mappings, and suspected data corruption, in simple terms. The system believed the company was attempting to process fraudulent payments. Inside the office, panic spread fast. The employee portal crashed under the weight of thousands of workers logging in at the same time, trying to figure out what had happened to their paychecks. Screens filled with numbers that made no sense. Some saw inflated balances that looked like lottery winnings. Others saw deductions so large it appeared they owed money just for showing up to work. Phones started ringing nonstop. Supervisors called in. Confused. Site managers demanded answers. Payroll clerks tried to explain something they didn't understand themselves. And then the workers started talking to each other. By early afternoon, job sites began shutting down. First one in Kansas, then another in Oklahoma, then Colorado. Within hours, it spread across every active project. 12,000 workers stopped working. No shouting, no chaos at first. Just engines turning off, tools being set down, and crews walking away from half-finished structures. When people who depend on every paycheck lose trust, they don't wait around for explanations. They act by 3 p.m. It wasn't just an internal crisis anymore. Videos started appearing online. Workers holding up pay stubs that looked completely broken. Local reporters picked up the story. Questions were being asked publicly now. How does a company this large fail to pay its workers outside the main office? Groups began gathering, not violently, just waiting, watching, inside. Ava had locked herself in a conference room, trying to fix a system that was unraveling faster than she could understand it. And Daniel Carter. He was finally realizing that this wasn't a small mistake. It was a collapse. I was sitting on my porch the next morning, coffee in hand, watching the fallout unfold on my phone. News outlets had picked up the story overnight. Headlines questioned how a company like Ironclad Infrastructure Group could fail something as fundamental as payroll. Videos of idle construction sites were everywhere. Workers standing around, arms crossed, waiting for answers that hadn't come. Then my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. "Lena," Daniel Carter said, his voice rough, stripped of its usual confidence. "We need to talk." I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "Looks like you've had a busy night. Cut the commentary," he said. "We have a serious situation. That much is obvious." There was a pause. "Not long, but long enough. I need you to come back," he said finally. "Consulting basis. Whatever it takes." There it was. The moment I knew would come. "Whatever it takes," I repeated. "Yes, all right," I said. 15,000 upfront, cash, and a new contract at double my previous salary. No hesitation this time. Done. "I'm not finished," I continued. "I want a public statement from you and Ava, clear and direct. You admit the failure came from implementing an untested system." Silence again. He didn't like that part. "Fine," he said at last. "And one more thing," I added. "I don't report to you anymore. I report directly to the Chief Technology Officer." Another pause. "Agreed?" I set my coffee down and stood up. "Send the details," I said. I'll be there tomorrow. This time, I wasn't coming back as an employee. I was coming back as the solution. I walked back into the building the next morning, and everything felt different. The parking lot was still crowded, but not with employees rushing to work. Crews stood in small groups, watching, waiting. Some of them recognized me. A few nodded. One of them gave a quiet thumbs up. They didn't need explanations. They just needed someone to fix it. Inside. The atmosphere was heavy. Conversations stopped when I passed by. People looked at me the way you look at someone walking into a burning building with a bucket of water. I went straight to the server room, for the first time in days. I heard it again, that low, steady hum. Not perfect. Not stable yet. But alive. Ava had done more damage than anyone realized. The data wasn't just corrupted. Tables were locked, references broken, and parts of the system had been overwritten in ways that made no logical sense. Worse, the primary dataset had been partially erased during one of her attempts to reset the process, but not everything was gone. There were backups, hidden layers, archived logs that only existed because I never trusted a system to protect itself. I started working immediately, hour after hour. I rebuilt everything piece by piece, restoring transaction histories, reconnecting data chains, validating calculations manually where automation couldn't be trusted. There was no shortcut, no clean solution, just experience guiding every decision. 18 hours later, I had something stable. At 6 a.m., I transmitted the corrected payroll file. This time, the bank accepted it. By the time workers woke up, their accounts reflected accurate payments, not just their regular wages, but compensation for the lost days as well. The system was running again, quietly, reliably, later that morning. I stepped into Daniel's office. He looked exhausted, older. Somehow, it's done, I said. He nodded slowly. Thank you. Ava, I asked, reassigned. He replied, Marketing analytics. I didn't respond. Some lessons don't need commentary. And your new position, he added, gesturing toward the corner office. It's yours? I looked out through the glass walls at the sites coming back to life. Trucks moving, crews returning, work continuing. I had control again. Not because I asked for it, but because I proved it. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You can't replace real-world experience with theory. You can't compress years of problem-solving into a spreadsheet. And you definitely can't run a system built on human lives with something designed for convenience. Some things aren't meant to be simplified. Some things are meant to be understood. And that's a lesson no Excel file will ever teach. If this story resonates with you, you're not alone. Many people have faced moments where their experience was overlooked. Feel free to share your own story in the comments. I'd genuinely like to hear it. I walked away from that experience with something deeper than just a promotion or recognition. I realized that real value isn't always visible on the surface. It's built quietly, over years of showing up, solving problems, and carrying responsibility when no one is watching. There will always be moments when people underestimate you, when they think something simpler can replace everything you've built. But what truly matters is knowing your worth and standing firm in it, even when no one else does. What stayed with me the most wasn't the chaos or the comeback. It was the reminder that behind every system, every number, there are real people depending on us, and that kind of responsibility deserves respect, patience, and understanding. If this story meant something to you, then you're already part of a community that values experience, integrity, and truth. I'd love to hear your thoughts or your own story in the comments. And if you believe more people should hear messages like this, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. Take care of yourself, keep believing in your value, and I'll see you in the next story.